Hello, my name is Manzke, and I'm going to show an example of combining like terms. Start off with a discussion of what are like terms and dealing with algebraic expressions. For example, let me back up. In general, there's two things you want to look for like terms. One, they have to have the same variable. Then two, they have to have the same exponent. Okay, so if I were to give you two terms, like say for example, I have 5x and 3x. These two terms are like terms because they both have the same variable with the same exponent. The x's have an exponent of 1 in this example. You could have multiple variables. Let's say you had 6xy and negative 4, let's say negative 5xy. These two terms are like terms because they have the same variables. They both have an x, they both have a y. You could have something like this. Let's say you had 2x. Here, I'll show you an example in a moment here. Let's say we had cosmetic work here. Let's say, for example, you had this. Let's say you had 2x cubed and 3x cubed. These two terms are like terms because they share the same variable and they have the same exponent. Let's take a look at some examples that are unlike terms. Now, unlike terms would be, let's say, for example, you had 5x and 3y. If the variables are different, then we would say these terms are unlike terms. Let's say, for example, you had something like this. Let's say you had, x. Let's say you had 2x cubed and say you had 3x squared. They both share the same variable, but the exponents are different. So we would consider this to be unlike terms. Another example, let's say you had something like this. Let's say you had a y here and a y here. Let's say, for example, the x's have the same variable with the same exponent, but let's say the y's are different, then you would say they're unlike terms. When you're working with things like this, you have to make sure that all the variables have the same exponent. So in other words, if you're dealing with y cubed and then y, those are unlike terms because this y here has an exponent of 1, this has an exponent of 3. You have to have an exact match, meaning that the y's both have to be raised to the third power and the x's have to be raised to the second power. Sometimes you might have terms like this. Let's say you had another example. Let's say you had, 9 and negative 6x. These terms are unlike terms. One's a constant, one's a variable. When you're combining like terms, okay, first you have to check that rule. They gotta have the same variable with the same exponent. You can add and subtract like terms. So for example, let's say I wanted to add together, let's say I had 5x and 3x. The rule is you add the coefficients 5 and 3 together. It's a form of distributive property that you're using. But essentially just think of it as just combining together the 3 and the 5, which would give you 8x. Another example would be, let's say, for example, you had, let's say you had 6xy and 5xy. Let's say you're going to separate those two terms by subtraction. So again, what you're doing here is you're just taking 6 minus 5, which would give you 1 xy, which is the same as just xy. Next example, let's say it's something like this. Let's say you had, let's say it's something like this. Let's say you're going to add together two terms, but they have the same variable with the same exponent. As a result, in this example here, this would end up being 5x to the third power. Again, what you're doing is you're adding a 2 and a 3 together. So those are some examples of combining like terms. If you have any questions on this, please contact me. Otherwise, I hope this is helpful. Please take care and have a nice day. Thank you for watching.